And we're live here at the station of decapitation without your head. I'm Nasty Neal, and I'm joined by FX makeup artist, musician, actor, Dr. Satan, Walter Phelan. It's very cool to have you here.
Hey, how you doing, Neil?
I'm good, thanks. It was
Long
10
time no
years
see.
ago. Yeah, it's nice to see you. Everything working here?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah. I was going to say it was 10 years ago when I actually met you for the 10th anniversary of House of a Thousand Corpses. And now it's the 10th anniversary of that, which makes it the 20th anniversary of House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. So I guess the first question, like when you actually made it, like I know it's, Rob Zombie's first movies directing and stuff, but did you think like, oh, this is something people are going to really attach themselves to and, and talk
Not,
about and think about?
yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I kind of knew about Rob a little bit, and I'd seen some of his videos and such. But when I did it, it was kind of like another job. I went in for 3 days and worked one day out of the three, and was like, okay, well, that was kind of cool looking. That was a neat thing. I have no idea what it was about, or anything. So yeah, it was a surprise when it came out, and it just kept like gaining momentum like every week. Like every week in LA, at least it had a little teeny ad. Then the next week got a little bigger. Then pretty soon had a full page ad, and so that was pretty exciting. It was really fun.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
actually, now that you mentioned that, not really knowing what it's about. So, did you actually have the whole script, or were
No.
you only aware of like your scene?
Yeah, just and barely anything, really nothing. I mean, I didn't get a piece of the script even, or like, any sites even. Um, it seemed pretty spontaneous and sort of improvised in a way. Um, I mean, of course, everybody knows, that there was like 2 weeks of reshoots that Universal paid for after they saw his original cut, which I don't remember how. I don't know how that ended. I wonder, I think everyone speculates that.
Yeah.
So they paid for those 2 weeks. That's when we did all that, all the catacombs and the professor and the doctor and all that stuff.
So were you not even part of the original cut then? Or?
No, I had never met. The only person I met was Jen, because she came in a few times. We did scenes with her, and so no, I actually didn't get to know like Sid or Bill or any of those people till like convention time. Started doing conventions, and then became friends with those people. So yeah, I had no idea really what it was, and which was kind of my gig. I play a lot of monsters, so it's not necessarily, I don't really have to know what's going on in the film, to get a sense of what to do acting wise or mime wise. But I could tell just from, just once I got in the makeup and got in the rig and we were on set and I saw what was happening, just kind of, I felt like a puppet. So like, I'll just kind of act somewhat like a marionette. Feels that way, tied to these strings. And yeah, and I remember Rob said, I think we did a couple lines. I don't remember what they were, but I think he threw me a couple lines and we did maybe 2 or 3 versions of it. And then boom, I was out of makeup and out of there,
Yeah.
And then afterwards, Wayne called me the next day and said, well, everything we filmed was out of focus. So I was like, oh, what, it's not going to be used? And eventually Rob put together what he could out of, the footage that they had, which is what gave it another kind of dimension too, because it's almost like a weird still photography thing. And then it slows down because he had nothing to work with. It was like, I guess there was nothing there. And then of course, later on, I guess all the footage got burned up at Universal from what I hear, So yeah, I kind of go in blind like that for most jobs,
right,
as the monster. Yeah.
So for House, you just went in to play Dr. Satan. You didn't do any of the effects on that one?
No, that was Wayne Toth, who has worked for Rob for decades now and does all of his movies. And he's the one that, because Rob said, who do you think would be good for this? It's real spur of the moment. And Wayne's like, oh, I work with Walt all the time, so he'll be perfect. He's good and skinny. He's going to look just perfect like the drawing. And which I meant to pull out. It's in the other room, but I can go grab it in a second. I do have like an original sketch that someone gave me.
Oh, that's wild.
which I think is Rob's sketch. I'm not quite sure though. So yeah, Wayne just called me up and said, "Hey, there's a Rob Zombie's making a movie. You want to be a monster in it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I just show up, and it's like, "All right, here,
Yeah.
go."
Yeah. You mentioned it's kind of a silly question, maybe, but you mentioned you're skinny for the roles. I know when I had Ben Chapman, who played Creature from the Black Lagoon in the original movie, he talked about like he couldn't gain like even like a pound or lose any because the suit had to stay
Yes.
because they molded right to his body. I from people I've talked to, that's not really changed that much. Like so,
No. No, because you have your body cast, and they've sculpted the whole thing on your body at that time. So if you change it all, it's going to change, how the suit fits. I don't. I just stay the same. I don't. It doesn't matter.
okay, I was going to ask if it's been hard or if you're just naturally
No,
that way.
I just stay the same since I was a youngster. I just don't change. It's been quite a while since I've worn any suits. And then the Dr. Satan was not really so much a suit. I mean, there was the makeup and a few prosthetics on it. And then it was mostly like body painting.
Yeah.
And, so it wasn't like a Dust Till Dawn or Demon Knight or one of those films where it's like a full body suit, like rubber pajamas.
Yeah. When you see the sketch for Dr. Satan or for any role, you immediately start to like figure out how you're going to move for that character, or is it once you're in the makeup?
Usually just once I'm in the makeup, because I probably won't even see anything until the day that I actually do it. And so I start thinking about it during makeup usually, which is a few hours. So I have a lot of time to like kind of, settle in. And then everybody leaves you alone for a little while. So I'd be in a honey wagon or whatever, my little trailer or whatever. And, with a mirror, work the face and try different movements and see what it looks like with the suit, which could be different, have different appendages or thicknesses to it. Yeah, and a lot of it mostly like thinking animal wise, and depending on the look of the thing, like different animals I usually think about movement wise.
Do you do like any research on those animals, or
no, I've pretty done that my whole life. I'm an animal fan, so I've had animals and kind of just looked and thought about animals my whole life. So it just kind of comes a little bit naturally, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned, so the movie's made and you start to see the billboards, but even before that, because I remember waiting for the movie to come out, and it seemed like there was a time like it might not ever come out.
I thought it would never come. We thought it would never come out. Yeah. And so after that, after we did those 2 weeks, well, my 3 days, but he did the 2 weeks of reshoots, then Universal dumped it. So he just sat with it for, I don't know, was it a year, maybe 2? I can't remember how long. And then periodically Wayne would call and say, "Hey, you want to go to Rob's house and shoot some stuff, throw you some cash?" And like, sure. So we did that, I think, 3 times at his LA house that he owned during that time. One of those old school kind of mansion houses down in LA. And it was a very Gothic looking place. And then, of course, they didn't fix it up. They just put up all their scary torture beds and and all this great artwork. And so that was really fun. That's some of the most fun I think I ever had, was going to his house and doing that. And we shot the Albert Fish stuff there. And we did some other little insert things, Tiny burning in the bed, and just different weird elements. And so it was great. And Sherry would cook us dinner and kind of hang out there. It was pretty neat. It was a lot of fun. Yeah. So I thought, oh, it's never going to come out. And then Wayne did makeups for, let's see, Rob was directing a Black Label Society video. And so I went and did like a couple monster guys. We were like Nazi pigs, and then we were these weird, like painted up guys, just all over Zakk Wylde. And during that, Sid came down also and had the makeup put on, and had like this weird Sid or Captain Spaulding little puppet that he was like walking around and laughing with this fucking giant mouth. And that's something I've never seen. I always wonder about where that footage is. That's the only thing I've never seen. And because I asked Rob, "Oh, is this in the video. It seems odd you would have this. He's like, no, this is for the movie. So he just kept filming like elements for the movie.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing I've never seen now. I'm really curious about that and wonder if it's going to be on one of the new DVDs.
Yeah, it's weird because so at the time when we didn't know it was going to come out, and I don't condone ever buying bootlegs, but I actually bought a bootleg of A House of a Thousand Corpses because
No,
at the time they thought it might not ever come out, so I bought it on eBay. This was
no,
kind of the
really.
Wild West days of eBay when people could sell like anything.
Yeah.
And then just a couple years ago when I was watching a documentary, because they said there's legend that there is like copies of the original cut of the movie out there. So I went and I found my old bootleg because I thought maybe I have one, but I unfortunately do not have
It was the theatrical one.
yeah.
Oh, it was. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'd love to see that. So I don't know what he's got on these new DVDs coming out, but it says there's a Dr. Satan makeup test, and I don't know. The only makeup test I remember is when we did Devil's Rejects. So I'm curious. I already
Yeah.
ordered copies of them.
Yeah. So when the movie comes out, so it finally comes out, where do you go see it for the first time? Do you see it with like the cast?
There was a premiere. Yeah. He had a premiere and took my wife down and we went and saw it. And then she leaned over and said, "Don't ever take me one of these fucking things ever again." And so that was kind of fun. Yeah. And there was a party afterwards at a little club down in Hollywood.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then I went back and saw it again in the theater, just by myself, just to see,
Yeah, I would
what it was
assume the
like.
first time you're not really necessarily even seeing it as a movie. It's kind of like, oh, this is something you don't even know anything about it, and it's more of
Yeah.
the
And it
experience.
was, yeah. And yeah, I wasn't sure what I thought about it at first. It was, it was like, okay, I got to kind of see this again. It was a kind of an onslaught to my eyes. And it was, I don't know. But then I ended up, I think I like it. Yeah, I think that's my favorite one of his movies.
Oh, really?
It
Okay.
seems the most like Rob Zombie to me in
I
his
would
world.
agree with that. Especially the way it's cut and stuff. It seems very much like his videos.
Yeah, yeah. It's
A lot
much
of
more of like a
framing.
rock and roll movie than his other ones, yeah.
Mhm.
Which are, I'm hot and cold on all of it.
I actually agree. Even I do the horror show, but I'm a big fan of a lot of them, and some of them I'm not a bigger fan of. I actually think Lords of Salem is probably his most underrated. Maybe it's not my favorite one, but I do think it's his most underrated movie.
Yeah, I did a bunch of stuff in that too. Another doctor and a bunch of ghosts and things. That was fun. And the masturbating priests, that was very fun.
When
We
you're
had
doing something like that, do you ever think in your head, what am I doing? Like, how did I get here?
Well, yeah, because Rob was like that, and I knew one of the other guys was Jake, who played the professor in House. Uh, so we knew each other, and we'd done a bunch of films. Did a bunch of suit stuff for K&B too, and worked for them for years. And so yeah, it was funny and weird and silly. And then we had these leather gloves, so I'm like, this thing's kind of dry. I can't really get a good stroke going here. So it was silly and funny, and everyone was kind of joking around. And so we had a guy, one of the grips had to get a thing of KY and had a tube of KY. So he was like filling our gloves up before each take. And I'm like, okay, well, we're kind of this is very, it's set, it's a square and there's four of us. And so, it's all very set up. I'm like, what? You want the outside guys using their, left hands and the inside guys using their right hands? Rob's like, whatever you're used to, whatever you want to do. Okay, yeah, right. So
That's kind
yeah,
of funny to
it's
think.
embarrassing sometimes.
Yeah, and now that whole scene is very funny to me now to think about, like they're actually directing it, like you said, like which hand you're going to use, and
Yeah,
is
exactly. Yeah.
is everyone in the same rhythm of stroke, and all these things.
Yes. So sometimes it's kind of embarrassing. I mean, I've done other things where I'm pretty much naked, with maybe a little loincloth glued on and being pummeled with stuff, or, thrown down a pit or swung around on wires or something. This is something hideous.
How did you? Because if people don't know, you go over this. Now, you originally were a makeup artist, so how did you? We can talk about that, and then also how you became started to become an actor.
Yeah, not so much a makeup artist, but I mean an effects guy. So I was
Okay.
kind of just, one of the effects rats, just learning the ropes. And In 92, I was looking for something new to do. I just had a kid, so I thought, I mean, I play music, I play drums, so that's what I've done my whole life. And there's not that much, money in that unless you're one of the lucky few, you know what I mean? So yeah, it was in 93 and I was looking for something to do and something, as a career. And my cousin, one of my first cousins, was working for some model shops at the time, and he was on the Abyss, and they were building like the big ships and the crane and the submarines. And so he got me a job over there, and I kind of hung out for a couple of weeks and glued lights on a ship and just kind of hung out. And I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. And then he happened to have known Scott Coulter, who was a makeup artist from New York, and who worked on like Street Trash and movies like that
Oh
when
yeah,
he used
that's
to be in
good.
New York. Then he was in LA, and he did a favor for him, and in lieu of payment, he hired me. And so I just started kind of sweeping up and emptying trash, and then I learned how to make molds, and then learned how to cast, learned how to run foam rubber, you know, went to set, learned how to pump blood and do rigs and this and that, and just, slowly learned makeup effects,
Mhm.
and then met Todd Masters, and that went right into Tales from the Crypt, because he was doing the last two seasons of Tales. So once I started working for him, I was really learning more and more, and a lot of hands-on work. And I kept bugging him, saying, I should get in a suit, a good size, zombie, mummy. Always thought of that my whole life. Anyways, not really wanting to be an actor, but I always just thought being the monster was just
Yeah,
the coolest job in the movie.
yeah.
It's the guy I always liked and rooted for anyway. So, and I did a couple Tales from the Crypt, and then when that season ended, the last season, we went into Demon Night, and so I wore a bunch of suits of that. I was a bunch of monsters in that,
Mhm.
and then from there, K and B, those guys, Howard Berger and Greg, saw Demon Night, and they had Dust Till Dawn coming up. So a couple of us got hired just through that. They called up Todd, and he gave him our numbers. And from there, I went and just, they went to Optic Nerve and just kept meeting people and working at different shops. And a lot of me being in suits too was a hands-on thing. So it's convenient. You
Mhm.
don't really necessarily go through casting to have that job. Sometimes, but a lot of productions would leave it up to the makeup guys. They know what they're doing, and they'd say, we have the guy, doesn't complain, does his thing, knows what to do. He's not a dancer or a stunt guy who doesn't know how to move. Our people actually love monsters and think about them all the time.
Yeah.
So it makes a big difference. And so that's how I ended up, work just years and years like that, just knowing everybody.
Was it did was it were you cool with it right away, like being encased in makeup or like in the rubber?
Yeah, I took to it right away. It was, yeah, yeah, yeah. I already knew what the deal was, sort of. So, and I also knew that if I wanted to get the jobs and make the money, that keep my mouth shut and not complain.
Right.
But also knew just through being a part of it, uh, what kind of technically works and doesn't work, or
Mhm.
you know what I mean. So even doing gags and things like that were much easier, and we just get that stuff done in one take. Um, because we'd work on it. Unlike taking in an actor who's not paying any attention or knows any of the guys who are doing all the effects and stuff. I'd just be a part of that team. So it would just move a lot smoother, and
Yeah.
we just get stuff done. One take,
And
which is usually when you're doing a practical effect, usually they leave you one take. It's like if that blood gag doesn't work or some major gag, they'll just move on, you know,
mhm.
and you lose that cool effect you wanted to do in the film. So you got to nail that stuff like first time.
And did it also help reverse? So like after you've actually played the creatures and monsters, did it help you with actors who weren't used to it? So maybe you could like kind of walk them through it easier once you had the
Sometimes, like,
experience.
yeah, those would mostly be like group scenes where there'd be like a gang of them, and they'd hire a bunch of dancers for a day and
Mhm.
put them in like cheaper looking suits, like in Demon Night when they're all growing. All those people behind us, there were four of us that had major makeups and were the main demons. And they were all dancers. So, they were like take them to the side and, kind of show them movements and stuff. And even then they're still like dancing. Even if we
Yeah.
watch the movie, some of them are like, it's like, well, okay. So yeah, sometimes it would be like that. Yeah.
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 When I watched it was I think you were on Extra or something at the time when Demon Knight
Mhm.
came out, and I noticed it's a very strange walk because they built stuff so your legs look like hooves and stuff. How hard was that to pull off, and actually any injuries from doing something like that or anything else in a movie?
That was pretty tough. And that was probably the toughest thing I wore with those Demon Knight suits because they weren't actually suits. I mean, we had the stilts, which a guy in the shop built,
Yeah.
and they were okay. So they were maybe 6 inches tall, but we'd be on our toes. So all of our weight was on the toes, which were bent. So yeah, my arches were in big trouble after that show. And they were not that hard. They were pretty lightweight, but um, they weren't that hard really to move in. And we could get up the stairs and everything. I practiced a lot at home. I took them home and practiced quite a bit. And then it was a little hairy on set because some of that where we're up on the railings, up on that walkway in that building, there's no railings. So we're up on those stilts and we're half blind because we got big giant, helmets
Right.
on. We can't
Yeah.
even barely see out of and stuff. And it's like you got 3 feet of walkway, and then it's another story down into cardboard boxes, which I don't want to land on. Which I never understood that, anyways. When they fall like that, they land in cardboard boxes. It's so bizarre.
That's supposed to break your fall, or yeah.
Yeah, that's what breaks your fall. Yeah, large cardboard boxes looks horrifying. So yeah, it was a lot of work getting those, and then those makeups were just pieces. So a lot of our own bodies were showing. We had gloves on, and then a little chest piece, just to make like rib cages, and then a hip piece which had a battery pack in it in the crotch, like a big Makita battery, those old Makita drill guns for the tails to move, which you barely even see, in the movie.
Yeah.
And then the helmets, and I had mechanical hands, which were all extended. So it was a lot of stuff, and then the rest was all paint. And we had to use packs. At the time, there was no water-based paints to use. They tried some at first, but we just sweat it off, and it didn't look that good. So we used the PAX paint, which is of course Prozaid paint, which is medical adhesive, and you couldn't scrub that stuff off. So yeah, it was painful. We had a lot of ripped little areas of our skin where you just can't get the rubber off. It just becomes part of you. So that was a lot different than the next movie, which was Dust Till Dawn, where it was an actual rubber suit, which you just slide into, and then the feet slide on, and they glue onto the rubber so it doesn't touch you, and the gloves slide on, and you have a light makeup on, and you're good to go.
Yeah. What was this
That's
set
actually,
on Dust Till Dawn like? Because I'm a big fan of Dust Till Dawn. I assume it had to be fun. It's almost like you're playing in this bar and you've got Fred the Hammer Williamson around. And
yeah, it was really fun, and Demon Knight was kind of treacherous, and then of course we'd only done stuff for Todd, so that was the first time I met the guys at K&B, and that's where I met Wayne Toth because he was a K&B crew, and he's a vampire in it too. Almost all the K&B guys are vampires in that, which is something I always liked about K&B Studios, is that they're such monster fans, and of course anybody
they
who
want to
works
get. Yeah.
that I've been on a lot of films with them where there's like a gang of zombies or vampires or whatever, and it's always their crew of guys. They get to like sculpt their own makeup, do each other's makeup, like really monster fan stuff, which I always really appreciated about those two guys. But it was fun. It was a much more comfortable thing to wear, like I said, because it was just like big rubber pajamas, and we were still quoting Pulp Fiction, and Quentin Tarantino's there writing. We saw him a couple times. I got a couple photos with him with my suit on, and of course I'd seen Desperado, and I thought that was really cool. Rodriguez's film, so it was exciting.
Yeah.
And then it was a lot of fun, and it was just a lot of action in that pool room. We spent, I think, 2 or 3 weeks there, and a lot of jumping over fire bars, and and he would just lay on like a little thing on his back with wheels on it, and with the camera like this pointing up, and of course we need to be jumping over the camera, and none of it was that choreographed, really. It was just
Right.
kind of go, and everybody's just kind of running and sliding and falling down and tripping over things and jumping over the camera. But he says, just watch out because I'm gonna be rolling all over the place. So that it was exciting and fun like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seemed like another guerrilla filmmaking project almost, even though it was, large budget.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was almost the first Tales movie, Dusk Till
Oh,
Dawn.
really? Like that was going to be
Well,
a Tales from the
Dusk,
Crypt movie?
yeah, Dusk Till Dawn and Demon Knight, they floated around Hollywood for about 10 years, those two scripts. They'd get to a certain point, and they'd be red light and almost get green lit. They'd be, and so they floated about forever. And originally, Dusk Till Dawn was going to be first one. They had optioned that, and I think a couple other stories too. And then they ended up going with Demon Knight, which originally had all the demons were like it described like Men in Black guys. They had black
Oh, really?
suits and sunglasses. Yeah. And at one point during pre-production, Todd Masters went in to the meeting and said, "This thing's going to fail. This is going to be crap."
Yeah.
He goes, "You're Demon Knight and with no demons." He goes, "We can
Right.
make some cool fucking monsters for this, And they said, "Okay, go design some stuff." And that's when him and the guys at the shop started designing those monsters with that, I thought they were just cool looking monsters. I don't know. They're kind of pumpkin
Yeah,
head
no, they
like.
look awesome. They kind of remind me of the gremlin from Twilight Zone the
Twilight
movie.
Zone. Yes, that
Yeah.
too. Yeah, yeah. And then they had nipple rings and nose rings, and I don't know. Yeah, I always thought mine looked like Gene Simmons. He had like a top knot of hair on him, and
Yeah. So your wife didn't go see Demon Knight or Dusk Till Dawn?
Yeah. Well, a lot of those I don't think I went to a premiere of that.
Okay.
At that point, everything's becoming like I think I kind of came in 92, 93 at the very end of sort of the makeup rock star thing. And also kind of the swag era where you work on a film, you just get like piles of swag stuff, like really nice stuff, nice
Right.
hats, jackets, all kinds of like really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that died. And you'd go to you'd have a screening, at least a cast and crew screening. That doesn't even exist anymore. Any of that stuff, Usually crews will make their own shirts and things. And I'd spent the last 7-8 years at Legacy Effects working on all the Marvel stuff and running foam latex over there for them. And yeah, I think we saw Apocalypse. And out of all those movies, that's the only one I think we went and actually saw as a screening,
Really? That's
And it was
unfortunate.
terrible. And it was like, oh, is this because it's terrible? Is that why you're sending us to this one? I did not care for that film.
It was age. Yeah, I'm not a big fan either. I have to admit, but
That's kind of beat up over the, after a while, all that stuff is too much of it anyways for me. The
the
whole Marvel
superhero
thing.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Got a little old.
Yeah. What kind of movies are you a fan of?
You
Are you a
know,
horror fan or?
oh yeah, I'm mostly an old school horror fan. Modern horror, not so much. I'm a big Western fan,
Okay.
and most of my favorite stuff is kind of from the 50s and 60s. I mean, I like film noir too. I like anything from like 30s, 40s, any film noir stuff. I like all that, and I like a lot of modern westerns too. But modern horror, it's not so much my thing anymore, And yeah, I watch a lot of old movies.
Well, yeah. I mean, I like new animal movies, but so like growing up, so like when you said old school horror, do you mean because you said 50s and 60s, but was that more like the westerns? Like what era of horror movies?
Yeah, well, I grew up, so I'm 64 this year. So I grew up in the 60s. So everything that I remember was the Beatles and Universal Monsters. I was like, that's all there was, I mean, Universal Monsters were like sold right to me and my age group.
Yeah.
I mean, they
I
were
mean,
selling
I have them here too. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. If I could just have my old Aurora long boxes I had when I was a little kid, I'd love that, And I think I bought those every time they came out, no matter what the change were. The bigger boxes, the square ones, then the glow ones, all of them.
Yeah.
And so I grew up during that era. So even as like 6 and 7, I mean, I could watch Preacher nights on. My parents would let me watch the Dracula and Frankenstein and all those. So I grew up on those things, and of course, I had any toy from that era, shirts, and then I'd dress up when I was 5, 6, 7 years old. I'd dress up as Dracula or a mummy or a clown, or so. Actually, that's always been sort of part of my life. Yeah,
And
from what I was
all
told.
that stuff still holds up too. I think all of it's still very creepy looking and looks great.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I was at a convention recently, and I was with Jake, and then I was like, Jake, do you even know any of these new monsters? The little pumpkin head guy, the black and white clown. I was just joking around too, with
Yeah.
like nobody at our table, so we're just goofing around. I'm like, all we had when I was a kid was Frankenstein. That's all you needed.
Who would have been your favorite then, Frankenstein, or you said Dracula a couple times?
Yeah, my favorite when I was a kid was Dracula for some reason, but I was mostly, I think, scared of the Wolfman. I think that was the most frightening to me for some reason. And Frankenstein was no, I don't remember being frightened of that. I remember being more sympathetic, even as a child, to that story.
Yeah.
And but Wolfman always was pretty scary to me. Yeah. And
really, Frankenstein, the doctor is really the monster, or the villain of that movie. The monster is actually, like you said, it's a sympathetic character.
Even in the better Bride of Frankenstein, which is the best of all of them. The other scientist is evil too. He doesn't care about anything. So yeah, I grew up on that stuff, and then then I was still into horror, even growing up in the 70s as a teenager. I mean, anytime a Hammer film came out, we'd go see that, my cousin and I. And then we loved, of course, there were the Count Yorga movies. Remember those?
Yeah.
That's what we had in the 70s, though. That was our horror films. I can't think of any other American ones so much. And then we go see everything, the Amityville Horror and all those. Which, boy, you look back at those movies now, and I'm like, was that scary to me when I was a teenager?
I don't know. Those you get it's just kind of basic, the two glowing eyes, but it's still kind of
yeah. Then you had the Omen, which actually had it was almost like pre, like Friday the 13th or whatever, in a way, just because there was like a series of kills.
Right.
Other movies didn't have those. And I remember when Omen came out, it was like, it was a series of like spectacular effect kills.
Yeah, it was a great beheading and stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. So yeah.
Did you ever get a chance to play in a Western?
No, never. Not even a horror. Oh, yeah, I guess so. I was in Jonah Hex.
Okay. I guess Dustful Dawn is almost a Western in its own way too.
Yeah. But Jonah Hex, but I was cut out. They filmed that movie twice. And I went out and played like an old zombie prospector, or I don't know if he was a prospector, but he's a zombie, and an old prospector comes up and like knows that there's gold and pulls a gold tooth out, and I forget what happens. I get out of the grave and kill. I forget. Anyways, but they had shot that whole movie and then reshot it. Then the stuff I was in was gone, which was a better script actually. It was like a bunch of vignettes about him. It was a totally different. I saw that, and then the theatrical one, I didn't care for it. Jonah Hex too much. So yeah, I think that's the closest Western I've been in. Yeah,
that's unfortunate. How about so Bordello Blood comes out? You work on that too. Was there ever? We'll talk about that. But was there talks to do a third Tales from the Crypt movie?
No, well, if you remember, they did. Yeah, that's kind of where they kind of jumped the shark, because they went cheap production for Bordello. They shot it in Canada. One of the many producers, Mr. Adler, he directed it. And so they had a completely different crew, and it was shot somewhere else. Now, when that came, before it came out, we did some stuff at Todd's for it. We did the vampire when she's like coming alive, eats the guy's heart. I did that scene. I'm in that suit. And then we did some other effects, and just to kind of fill it out. And then they made that third one, which was like straight to Viewmaster. I forget what that was called, the Relic or was it the
Oh,
Relic?
okay. I'm not
Mm.
sure, but okay, they did.
It still
I
had
should
the
look.
key in it for
It's
some
funny you said
reason.
Viewmaster. Actually, my brother, my brother and I were at a toy store recently, sold old toys, and they had the old Viewmaster that we had
Yeah.
that would actually project onto the
Oh,
wall.
cool.
And we're like, oh man, it's even the same box. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's neat. Yeah. I like those things. Those things were cool.
yeah.
Um, but I forget what the original question was. So
It
yeah,
was
we did some work, but the thing that changed so much,
ritual, by the way.
ritual, okay. The thing that changed so much or made Demon Knight so good was after Tales ended as the TV show, it went straight into that. So it was like doing a longer Tales episode because it was the same crew. So
Mhm.
everybody was the same effects, makeup effects, camera crew, everybody. So it was like that same family just doing an extended version, which I think is why it turned out so good. Because we'd have directors every different episode. So that wasn't even, that was the same kind of change. And um, and then when they went to do Bordello, they just 86 that idea. And I think that's why it kind of wasn't quite the same.
Yeah, I love Demon Knight. Bordello is all right, but yeah, it's but Demon Knight's a genuinely like really fun movie too.
It doesn't have the Tales feel to it.
That's very true.
The movie still felt like the show to me in a way, you
Yeah.
know, it still had that feel to it.
Because even when you said about Dust Till Dawn, I could see that being a Tales from the Crypt
Yeah,
idea because it's a very fun movie and it kind of bends genres, which I think would be like the big twist in a Tales from the Crypt episode. And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Dust Till Dawn is a cool movie because the horror stuff's in the beginning with the humans, and it's like a
yeah,
cartoon afterwards. I always thought that was a cool juxtaposition just to have those two parts like that, and
yeah,
have the
yeah,
human the scariest part of it. You know.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's yeah.
And then I
And
did three. Well, Dust Till Dawn 3 was that Hangman's Daughter, and I played a couple vampires in that.
oh, okay.
And wore a bodysuit that was from Wishmaster that I wore in Wishmaster. That's how
Oh,
that stuff all the
does
time.
that happen often?
All
Like
the
if you
time.
already have the suit, might as well use it again. Or
All the time. Yeah. One of the great ones for me is in Mandalorian, which I was
Mhm.
working when I was working at Legacy. We did all that stuff for Mandalorian, including keeping that puppet quiet for a whole year, which was amazing. I don't know how that was pulled off in this day and age, but
Yeah.
we kept it quiet. Nobody knew about that sucker. And is the Frog Lady, who then her husband is the same head with just a little bit
Oh,
different
okay.
thing glued on. And that's from some Geico commercial from like 20 years ago. They needed a
Uh,
frog person.
yeah.
So they just pull it. Oh, we got a big frog head from
Yeah,
some
we have one
Geico
here.
commercial.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they do, see a little bit to sculpt it a little bit different, put a couple
Sure.
things on it, some different little
Yeah.
spots or whatever.
Might
And
as well recycle it, but yeah.
yeah, but that stuff happens all the time, all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. I had a guest on not that long ago, and he talked about he got his head cut off it was Friday the 13th, part 5, and then
Mhm.
he tried to track down his severed head, and they knew where it was, and apparently it's been in like all these movies and had bullet holes in it and stuff, and I was like, it would be fun for him to track down all the movies his head was in, but he didn't
Yeah,
want to.
yeah. No, you'd be surprised. Yeah, stuff gets redone all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Mandalorian. So what are you working on currently? You said you did some stuff for
Not that
Mandalorian.
I'm kind of semi-retired now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I worked up till last August at Legacy, and I live in Oregon now, so I'm up here. Actually, it just snowed all night.
Oh,
Everything's
really?
covered in snow up here.
All
Yeah.
right. I'm in Massachusetts. It's kind of cold, but it's not snowing at the moment.
But last thing I worked on there was Guardians 3,
Mm.
which was so one of the longest things I've ever worked on. That thing
Really?
went
In a
on
good
for
way or a bad way or just
in a good and bad way. I mean, I was working in the shop, so I was producing pieces and doing that, and
mm.
it was a lot of work. There's so much practical stuff in it. It's unbelievable. And I don't know if you've seen the trailer, but there's all those animals and that
Yeah, yeah.
went
I
on
like
forever.
those. I'm a little burnt out on comic movies too, but I do like the Guardians of the Galaxy movie because they kind of seem more to me like an adventure, almost like a Star Wars kind of movie.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And so that was the last thing I did there, and that went on and on and on and on and on and on. And I finally got out there in August. So yeah, I just kind of taking it easy right now and just looking for the next thing. And I got conventions coming up, stuff like that. There's a few public appearances still. And then I play drums in a band, and we were constantly recording and touring. And so
Yeah,
I spend most of my time.
what is it? Is this the band Pank Todd and the Rank Outsiders? I was actually watching some of you guys on
Pat,
YouTube.
yeah, yeah, that's us.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I saw you on the drums.
yeah, yeah. So that's my latest musical endeavor, at least. And Pat's been around a long time. He's been in the LA punk scene, as I was too. We never crossed paths though, which is strange. It's not that big of a town, LA. And so yeah, I've been in his band for about 7 years. Yeah, he's a guy that works at Legacy.
Oh,
He's
well,
worked
that's really
there.
cool.
Yeah, he'd been there from the Stan days. When Stan used to own the shop. And
Uh,
yeah.
when it kind of seems like things are going, there is a turn, like a comeback of practical effects, but when CG really started to take over, how did that affect your work?
Not so much. Everybody said that, oh, you'll never run foam again and this and that. And it's like, okay, yeah. And yes, to a certain degree, I noticed it mostly with like brand new shops that would open up, and they wouldn't even build like foam rooms. I mean, it's such a staple, the foam rubber, for just about everything. Now, makeup's changed a lot because makeups are pretty much 99% silicone now.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's mostly what they wear, are silicone makeups. But working at Legacy, I mean, we used to get 55-gallon drums of foam rubber. I mean, I ran it for years, day in, day out. So it's still very much a practical thing to use. And yeah, I saw that kind of die off, and then really not used correctly. So you got a bunch of dated films now with really bad CGI.
Yeah, when I was saying about like the Universal stuff, like that still holds up. And I really think like a lot of the classic horror stuff really holds up. And even bad practical effects, I think, has like a charm to it. Where CG, even
Yes.
some of the stuff that was considered great at the time, like the prequel Star Wars movies, actually that stuff does not hold up. And
No,
like the stuff that was cheaper really looks very bad.
it looked horrible when I went to see those. I took
Mhm.
my kid when those came out. It's like, oh, you get to see the old Star Wars. And I was like, what did
Yeah,
they do?
yeah.
What did you do to these
The
movies?
original Yoda's great, and Jabba the Hutt. He's like now he's looks like a
No, no,
cartoon,
no, no.
and
Yeah.
it's
But I
bad.
watched that, like you take that Van Helsing movie and the horrible CGI in that and stuff. Whereas like at the time, I was always like, why don't they use the CGI for what you can't physically do and then cut to the real thing, especially in a close-up or something, and then give us that real thing, because that's how we react. We don't know how it
Yeah, I
happens,
think
but you react
right.
to it.
Even if you don't know why, it just doesn't look right to your eyes. I don't
No,
think.
no. And I saw it go from that to, where it's completely, utterly convincing, like the Planet of the Apes movies, the more
Mhm.
modern ones, where those things totally sell. I mean, I couldn't tell you that's not a real ape. I think they look fantastic.
Yeah,
And um, the movies I can watch once and I've seen it, unfortunately. But I think the motion capture is to such a degree, and now they've all gone back to practical. It's like they got it to a state where it's just like totally sellable, and now it's gone back to practical. It's like the
right, right.
Guardians, James Gunn. He wants everything is practical in it, even if it's there for 2 seconds. It's going to be a suit or a puppet or a makeup. So a lot of younger directors, after all that time of that CGI for however many years, younger guys came up and went, you know what? I want to go back to practical. So I see more of it now. It's so odd. Film's odd how it goes like that.
Honestly, it's a selling point for a lot of horror movies. Like, oh, this is all practical. Like, they want to tell that to fans. They think it's more appealing to people.
And it is. And now you have like something that jumps out of nowhere. Like I just had it on the tip of my tongue and then forgot about it. Terrifier 2, which is like a whole 80s throwback
Yeah,
of just gore effects
yeah.
and nice practical effects and just off the wall. It reminds me of an 80s movie very much so, you
I
know.
how I say it seems like an 80s slasher movie if they didn't have to worry about the about censors.
Yeah. Which the cool part about that was back, back in the day when Toby Hooper and they're all making their movies is, I always love that about, I don't think you have to worry about censors anymore, do you? You certainly don't with language and other things on TV. So I don't think movies either. But back in the day, like 80s or, 90s, they used to always do that thing where they
They cut away from like all the
or they just do a scene that was completely, they knew was going to get cut, which had nothing to
right.
do with their movie whatsoever. And they'd all do that. And then they'd shoot that. The MPAA would see it and go, well, that's just all, we got to cut that. And then the shit that was still, they would have cut before, the director gets in because he put something more outrageous in to get cut out, which was a trick. I thought that was always so cool that they would do that, and trick those bastards.
So did you like the Terrifier? Do you like the Terrifier movies or?
I liked it for that effect,
Right.
for that, just I liked it because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was very weird. So I saw the first one. I had a lot of people on before it really started to get a buzz because I liked it. And then what was weird, the second one, going to see it at the theater, and it's like so graphic, and there's like, it's kind of fun to me knowing like there's pretty much kind of normal people here who think they're going to see like a traditional horror movie, and you're just seeing like the most graphic stuff like on screen.
That's great.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me, but yeah.
Yeah.
Because I saw some people leaving and stuff, but it's also good for independent horror films, that a movie that has it's a bigger budget than like people I know make movies, but still not nearly to like, millions of dollars. And then it played so long in the theaters and stuff. I think that's, good for people.
Yeah. Did they give out barf bags or anything like back in the day?
They did not. That would have been a good idea though.
Yeah.
Like the William Castle kind
of promotions and stuff are awesome.
Yeah, I went to see they showed the 13 Ghosts, the old William Castle movie, and they gave out the old the glasses where if you were too afraid, you looked through the one eye and you wouldn't see the ghost, and if you looked through the other eye, it was very fun.
It wasn't a very horrifying ghost anyway. So
no, it was not. Yeah, but the experience, it was so cool to say I went and saw it that way.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Uncle Salem's in the chat says, I love this dude. Hiya, Walter. It's Paul Canellis from Final Horror Convention.
How you doing, Paul?
And he says he hates CG blood. That's true. I do think CG blood never looks very good. Also, fire.
Oh, terrible. Oh, yeah. I don't know if anybody's doing that anymore. Unfortunately, one of the worst ones I've seen is in Devil's Rejects, which is when they're in the hotel room and she gets stabbed. I forget who it is. Look, boy, yeah, it doesn't work. Why you wouldn't do a blood gag, I don't know. Unless the actor's completely like, I can't have corn syrup on me. You're getting paid. You're getting corn syrup on you. I mean, you could do blood effects so well. It just doesn't make sense to me at all. No. Yeah. I don't think they're doing that anymore, are they?
I know not that long ago on Walking Dead, they would still do the CG.
Oh, really?
And it was, it would really take you out of it. It's weird because the zombies look cool, then they'd have the CG blood spatter.
Yeah, no, not for me.
So, Devil's Rejects, I shouldn't bring up. So how early on did you know that your scene would not be in the final cut?
Like right away.
Okay.
I think Rob just wanted it as some kind of safety measure, So yeah, pretty much right away. Like the day after, I think. But it was fine. We shot, because then I still got to make up a couple of the times. We went up to the ranch up in Newhall and shot like when they're raiding the house, and we shot a couple things there, me getting in an ambulance and some other stuff that you really don't see during the first credits. And then we did that. You could kind of tell that, even if you watch like the documentary where he's laughing and he thinks it's goofy, and which it is kind of goofy. It's a cool thing though. And that was one of those, get it done once or we can't reset. So that effect on Rosario, Wayne had done like 3 levels to that thing. So he had an underlying piece, And then he had another piece that was like stretchy stuff. Then he had the actual skin appliance over it, which he had already sculpted like finger holes in, almost like a bowling ball. So I could just stick my fingers in, and I had to grab the top prosthetic and then the gooey stuff, but not the third layer. Pulled that off, it would have ruined the gag. And they got to hit the blood. So yeah, that was one of those things where once we finally, we started it with me holding her throat already, and the guys grabbing my arm, and 5 men grabbing my arm, and it's like, all right, but that's not going to work because you guys are really grabbing and yanking my arm, and it's just not going to work. I'm not really a monster, so I don't have the strength of an ox. So then they're like, okay, so then they just played it, a little easier. And that thing is stretched forever. I thought it was never going to snap. But it was so cool. And she was really happy because she loves horror films, Rosario. And she was all excited. Then when it got cut, she was disappointed. But yeah.
It still is it is a cool scene. And talk about CG blood. I mean, that's real blood. Well, not real blood, but it's practical blood, and it looks awesome.
It's about 10 gallons of blood coming out of there.
Yeah.
She was soaked, and so that was a lot of fun. And it wouldn't have fit in that movie.
No, it's a very He
had changed the world so much. I mean, those people weren't even the same people. So because you wonder about that. But Rob's funny like that. He doesn't give a shit. This is my idea now, and this is how it is. Well, it doesn't make any sense. I don't care. Because I was like, what? This makes no sense. How is that guy not an albino? Where is everybody?
The Bill Moseley character especially is complete. The other,
he's not even
like Sid's is more realistic, but you could still kind of same guy. But the Moseley character is just a completely different person.
Well, you can't not be an albino. You got pink eyes and white skin. That's just, you're Edgar Winter. That's it. So that was confusing to me, but I saw what he did, and whatever. People love that movie, And there's all kinds of questions. That's not the house. There's no way that's the same house. Where is everybody? Where are all the victims? Where's the rest of the family? Where's that? You know what I mean? It's like, so
it's like a cool movie on its own, but it's very bizarre that it's completely different than the original one. It's almost like he remade his own movie, but as like a realistic version or something.
Well, that's what's fun. He'll do what he wants. He doesn't. He's a funny
guy. That
one
actually did really well with the critics. I know Roger Ebert gave it a really good review, which he notoriously hated horror movies. So.
Really, yeah. And I don't know if House ever got a good review, maybe from horror people, but I don't think from mainstream. But that's interesting. So it's kind of a notorious thing. And then there's a cool documentary. You can see the whole scene and us talking about it, and I'm talking about why he cut it and all that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. It became notorious.
Yeah, and it's good that they didn't get burned up like the footage from House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Like I said, those DVDs are coming out, so I don't know what he's going to put on those things. Mm-hmm. The other extra footage he had on older versions of House were like guys standing around a pit digging a hole. If you've ever seen that stuff, it was like extra footage. We're like, it's a bunch of guys digging a hole. This is
so that's what I've always wanted to see. Right?
Yeah. I want to see that original ending and then what it was supposed to be like,
Mm-hmm. So when you start to meet everyone from the movies at the conventions, well, first of all, going to the conventions right away, like, what did you think they'd be like, and how different were they once you started to go?
I thought it was a stupid idea because I was like, why would anyone want to do that? I don't understand, why would somebody want my autograph? I don't get it. And then I started getting booked around a little bit, and they were all kind of terrible around LA. One OJ was at one. And
really?
And we were in like there used to be a mall in Northridge, and it was all derelict, and that's where they had one of them. And OJ was there signing footballs and stuff. That was really creepy. And
I want to laugh, but it's very
talk about a horror convention.
Yeah.
And I did a few of them, and then it was like, these things, this is kind of creepy. Just sit here all day and nobody really know. I don't know. And then eventually, I think I did a Days of the Dead or something bigger, or went to Toronto, and it was like huge. And I was like, oh, this is pretty fun, And then slowly started getting booked on different ones. Yeah, and that's continued. That's been a long time now. I think, oh, maybe 2004 or 2005. Maybe '05 was the first one I did. And so they're fun. But I mean, it's insane what's happened with those. It
Yeah,
never
really
used to
blown up.
be. I mean, when I was first into horror, even in the '90s, there was Fango Convention, which hit 3 cities. I
Hmm.
think they did New York, LA, and San Francisco, maybe, or Chicago, or something like that. And that was your whole year of horror conventions. You had Comic Con, but people sold comic books there, you know. And then in LA, there still is, and for a long time was this celebrity signing that the Shrine, I think the Shrine, which would happen, and that had been around a long, long time, which is kind of a slashy comic book convention, and then leftover 50s and 60s stars, signing
Yeah,
autographs.
that's
That
very
still
cool.
happens, that show.
Yeah.
Um, those are actually some of my favorite, like Chiller and things like that, where it's
Yeah, I've never been to
oh,
one because I started the show in late 2005, 2006, and at that time, I'd have people on like Ben Chapman from Chiller, and it was cool because it was the people that were still around from like the '50s movies, like you're talking, like Kevin McCarthy and
you could meet anybody at
Conrad
those.
Brooks from Play 9 from Outer Space and stuff like that.
And a lot of old bands or people who were in old bands, stuff like that. I'm a big Alice Cooper fan, and never saw like the original band. And I did a Chiller, I forget which year, and then the next year, like the original band was all there signing.
Oh
So
wow,
I kind of I they're like, we don't like to have guests twice, and I said, if you give me a table, I'll pay my own way. So I
yeah,
spent most of my time at their tables getting shit signed and old
yeah,
schools out albums and stuff, and that was a lot of fun. And then they played usually Chillers, the band, an old band will play, so they played that night. Um, it was fantastic. It's really
yeah,
cool.
yeah. There was one it's in Worcester. It ended just a few years ago, but Rock and Shock, and they would during the day it was a convention, and then at night they would have the rock concert.
Is it
Uh,
gone now?
yeah, unfortunately, it
Oh,
was. I think the last one I went to was the last year they did it. It was like 2 years ago, I think. But
oh, okay. Yeah.
Rob Zombie did one year was the musical guest, and the year I went it was Misfits, I think, and
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
yeah.
I did one or two of those. I think that's where I first met Ari Lehman,
Oh, okay.
and he was playing, and
Yeah, he's
I
playing
think like
the
some other bands.
guitar. Yeah.
He was playing his guitar. That's back when it was just kind of him. Now he's got a full band going and
Oh, he
stuff.
does. Okay. I saw him play
Oh,
the guitar at the Viper Room in LA when I was out there for actually for the Days of the Dead where I did
yeah.
the panel with you here.
And you saw my band that night.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My old punk band, RF7, we played that night.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so I was there for that too. That's awesome.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
I didn't even put that together. So yeah.
Yeah, nobody came to that convention.
Yeah, it was people told me at the time like LA's hard to do a convention because people are used to seeing everyone already in LA. So you have to have like a really like a name
Yeah,
that really stands out, I guess.
LA is just that kind of a place. I mean, I spent my whole life there playing in bands and stuff, and everybody's in a band or everybody's an actor or, and yeah, even playing. I remember the first time we went out of town and played shows, and it was like, well, everybody comes to this club and stays all night. Because in LA, group of people come see the band, they'd all split. Come see the next band, they'd all split, like in one evening. That's just
Right.
kind of because it's kind of how it was in that city. So yeah, that not so good. That's why I got out of there too. I was sick of living in LA.
Yeah. Yeah, most people don't like living. I've only been there a handful of times visiting, so it's a different feel for me.
Yeah,
But
it's great to visit. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I was out there a few months ago, and it was. I mean, it's never the greatest area, like off Hollywood Boulevard, but it was not a pleasant experience. There was a lot of people, abandoned cars with people just passed out in them, and I was like, oh, I
Oh
don't want
yeah,
to be there.
great.
Yeah,
That must
yeah,
be a fentanyl season.
yeah. It was. And I had gone out 2019. I was out there. I filmed my first feature film, and then so we were at the premiere in 2022, and it had gone downhill a lot in those 3 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I scooted up here to Oregon. It's cold, but it's nice and quiet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, any stories with Sid Haig, since you didn't really get to meet him when you're making it, but I'm sure you must have met him a lot at the conventions.
Yeah, we hang out at the convention some. He was a kooky guy, um, screaming about Ronald Reagan or whatever. I don't know. We went to dinner once, and he told me about some film he was on, and he was just telling everybody at the table the story. And they were in South America or somewhere, and and he was not doing anything. He was bored, and the scouts were going off to scout a location out in the jungle. So he's like, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Oh, so I'll just go along." And they truck through the jungle, and they find like a village. And he says, "It's like real shit, like skulls on poles, huts,
Yeah.
a boiling pot, like the real shit." And so they entered. He said they entered the little area, and the main guy handed this one scout like a hot bowl of something steaming, and the guy's like, "I ain't fucking drinking that." And I guess Sid said, "Well, somebody had to, because what's going to happen if we don't?"
You'll be in
So
the
he said
pot.
he,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
drank some of it. He's pretty sure it was some kind of blood or something. And he said, so they did their thing, and they were like, "Okay, well, let's go now." And he said about halfway back to the jungle, he started hallucinating. And he said he spent like 2 or 3 days just hallucinating out of his mind. And he had drinking some kind of weird bloodberry mixture or something. And then he talked about him and Lee Marvin getting in fights at bars and things like that. Because I was like, "Oh, you're in a couple Lee Marvin movies, like some of my
Yeah.
favorite shit, like Emperor of the North Pole. You ever seen that?"
I have not seen that. No.
Yeah, that's Lee Marvin and Ernest Borgnine and Keith Carradine. And it's a Depression era movie where he rides the trains, and Ernest Borgnine is like this. Hey, you'd love it. He's like this killer conductor guy. He's got a whole case full of hammers and chains and shit that when the bums are on the train, it's really good.
Yeah.
And Lee Marvin's going to ride his train no matter what. And but Sid's in that. He's like, yeah, the vagabond guy in a couple of the scenes. So yeah, he said him and Lee Marvin go out to get in fights at bars.
That's what always struck me anytime I was around him, like away from the conventions. I had dinner with him once too, is like he had this crazy career like in old Western TV shows, and like it really spanned decades, and it's really wild to think of all these different experiences he had.
Well, yeah, from weird westerns to blaxploitation movies. And you've seen any of those? You ever seen White Mama, Black Mama?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the blaxploitation movies. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hilarious. That one's really funny. And he's like a cowboy guy for no reason. So odd. So
Yeah.
odd. And
But
then
yeah,
somebody's remaking Spider Baby, I think.
I know, I saw that. That's a very bizarre film to remake, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I just got hit up by I was in Ontario at the Creatures feature, or what was it called? I don't know. A few weeks ago in Ontario at a convention, and some guy's like, "I'm remaking this. Do you want to be in it?" And I was like, "I don't know. Sure."
Right, right.
What's it pay? I don't know.
Yeah, I
I don't
actually
know if
think I know
that's
it's
the
making
person.
it's I think it's Dustin Ferguson is remaking it.
Oh, okay. I don't know who this guy. I don't even
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
who the guy was that came up. It could have been him. I have no idea.
yeah.
I'm sure.
But yeah,
Yeah.
it's a very I mean, I don't know, who knows what they'll do with it, but it just seems it's just a bizarre movie. And it's like what's cool about is Lon Chaney Jr.'s in it, and like a young Sid Haig. So you have like a horror icon from the previous generation, and then a future horror
Yeah.
icon from
Interesting,
another
huh?
generation. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sid used to say that his career was um how did he explain his career? Um we got to get Sid Haig. He'd get somebody get Sid Haig, get me Sid Haig. And he said, then it'd be like, get me a Sid Haig, get me someone like Sid Haig. And then it would go, who the fuck is Sid Haig? He goes, that was my career 3 times at least. It would go that way, up, then down, and up and down, like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
Which was nice of Rob to like give him his last, really
Yeah, I
put him
mean, it
on the
really
map. Really put him
reinvigorated.
on the
Yeah.
map. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was the first guest ever on the show, 2006. And I never interviewed anybody, and he agreed to do it. So I was always really grateful to him, and he was always really nice and got me involved in the conventions and stuff. But but a really humble guy. And I remember in the interview, I asked him about, getting the role of Captain Spaulding later in his career. And he really talked about how much it meant to him. And
Yeah.
it not only just in the movie stuff, but it really made his career on the conventions too. And
Yes. Well, kind of made everybody that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he was a guy that I always admired at the conventions, because he would, when people would get kind of ridiculous with their prices, he would say something, and he would give like the free selfies, and he would never raise his prices over like $10 for his own autograph, and maybe 20 if it's like his own picture. And
Yeah. That pissed Bill off. God damn it, you never raised the prices.
Yeah, I think now it's probably like $75, like the lowest. I don't know, but yeah.
Some people, yeah.
But I
Some
remember
people,
there was a little while there when The Walking Dead got really big, and they started to charge to even to like say hi to them. Like there was literally, you had to pay $10 to even go up, even if you didn't buy
just to say
anything.
hi.
Yeah, and Sid was like very against that, and so that didn't
Oh
last very
yeah.
long, which I was
Well,
happy.
shit, they were having their own conventions for a while. It's how huge that. I could have used
Yeah.
a little piece of that. Never did play a zombie in any of those.
Oh, one of the he it doesn't matter, but so when I would be at the conventions as press, so I would host the panels, and I'd go around and just get pictures of the whole thing, kind of like as B-roll or whatever. And
Yeah.
the only person that ever told me not to take their picture at their table was a guy who played a zombie in like one episode of the show, and I was just like, okay, that's fine. But I was like, I mean, like you
Just
played a zombie in one episode of the show, and
yeah.
like no pictures. I was like,
You're
okay,
not on a rocket ship to the stars, buddy.
right,
You should be grateful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was very fun. I don't remember the person's name, but I just remember the incident, and I always thought it was very funny.
I am. I'm totally grateful. I love the fans. I love doing them. I like talking all day to people about movies and giving them whatever information they don't know, or I think it's great. I
Yeah.
see a lot of people. I see a lot that don't. And it's like I don't even know why they go there.
Yeah, I've never understood that either. I used to go to them a lot as doing the panels and stuff. And you can kind of see the people that genuinely enjoy being there and talking. Obviously, you're there to make money stuff, but people also enjoy talking to the people that are part of why they're successful or why they have a career. And but then you would see people you could tell aren't happy to be there, and I always thought,
And don't.
why even
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I'll get in conversations for a long time, or people want to know about, younger people or parents want to know about makeup schools, and I'll rail on those. Forget that. You can say, save your 40 grand or whatever it is. Yeah. I tell them, I say, just get the phone numbers of the shops in San Fernando Valley. If you got that much money, you're willing to pay for a college, just cold call those people and say, I'll work for free, and nobody will pass that up.
That, I mean, similar thing comes up a lot on the show for people. Most of the people I'm friends with who make movies didn't go to film school, and a lot of them say, they learned to do it working, being on a set for a movie, and you can
Yeah.
pick up, what to do. And because
Of
if you do
course.
spend all that money, there's no guarantee you're actually even gonna get a job making anything.
No, and I'd see the other end of it at Legacy, where something like Guardians or any of those giant shows, we'd need huge crews of people. So they'd need 10 people casting silicone appliances all day and night.
Mhm.
Some of them just cleaning the mold. It's a hideous process, cleaning it or prepping it or just casting. You have all three of those processes, and they'd get, there'd be 10, 12 gals, mostly gals, not a lot of guys going to makeup anymore. I don't know why. It used to be exclusively. And I think their parents are just, well, what are you going to do with your life? Okay, well, you're going to this school, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they come in and they end up they move out of their whatever state they lived in and move to California, which is super expensive. They end up making $10 an hour. And, a lot of them end up going back home. Some of them stay, some of them, end up making a career out of it. But yeah, I'm not really that hot on makeup schools. Plus, in today's day and age, you pick up your phone, there's a whole makeup school on your phone. When I started,
Yeah.
early 90s, when I started, there were like 3 books. I mean,
Right.
there was Tom Savini's thing, but that didn't teach you anything. That gave you a little bit of information and made you more confused. Then there was a 3D makeup book, which has these horrible greasy makeups in it that everybody had. And there wasn't much, you know, and you could get that information out of a book, but still it was like, I'm confused. Something's not sinking in. You know, now you can get tutorials online and learn anything and everything. So yeah, I don't see a reason to go to
Yeah, I
school.
think that same goes with most things. Like reading a cookbook isn't the same as watching a video how to make something, because
Yeah,
you can learn how to actually watching and doing it. It's a lot easier way to learn than reading,
exactly.
technical side.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm against them and whatever.
I did have the Tom Savini book. My brother bought it for me when I was a kid.
One or two. I have both,
I'm not sure which one it was,
but
but
not an original.
I remember it just showed like it was like Rice Krispies, I think, for the face of
Oh, on the zombie.
yeah, and the Father's Day. Yeah,
Yeah, yes, he had Rice Krispies on him.
right. So I'll ask one of these questions. Pepe Petit. Not necessarily your favorite movie, but what movie you look back on that you had the most fun working on?
Most fun working on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd had that. Like I said before, that's probably Dust Till Dawn and Demon Knight. Those are the most fun. It's kind of brand new, you know, to the thing. So everything was still pretty new and exciting. You know, it wasn't old hat like I've been doing it for 10 years or something. So yeah, I was still excited about it. Movies are really good, I think. So, you know, I felt really lucky to at least not have to start out on some low budget level where I actually had some pretty good prominent horror movies to start with, you know. And so yeah, Dust Till Dawn was just a lot of fun. It was easy. And Demon Knight. But working with Rob is always fun. So just being around Lords of Salem was fun. And and working on his music videos. I did 3 or 4 of those with him. And those are always fun. You know, he's like, okay, get in a robot suit. Okay, you're a monkey now. Put on a zombot head or whatever, you know. And so those are really fun. Not so much fun like low budget stuff. Um, you know, by the 2000s, I was doing a lot of low budget stuff. A lot of either straight to video, some stuff never even seen, you know, and that got tiring real fast. So yeah, I'd say Dust Till Dawn, Demon Knight are my favorites.
Yeah, I just saw Dust Till Dawn recently. I go to a 12-hour horror movie marathon on Halloween night. It's
Yeah.
from midnight till noon the next day.
Wow.
My friend Annabelle and I, it's always fun. She always brings a pillow to take a nap during one of the movies. But
Well, that's good.
yeah, and it was vampire themed, and one of them was Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, cool.
Oddly enough, it was also the original Dracula, so you would have been happy.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean not Dawn of the Dead, Dust Till Dawn, but yeah, Dust Till Dawn and the original Riddle Dracula. Two very different movies, but both about
Yes.
vampires. Yeah.
And Dracula is very different from that Mexican one too, which is
Yeah.
actually considered a better film. It is. It's technically a way. Have you ever watched those two together?
The Mexican one, I don't think
Yeah.
so.
It's
I'm
the
a big
same
fan of
movie.
Nosferatu, but yeah.
Yeah, it's the same movie. It's just cleaned up. It's
Hmm.
shot so much cleaner and edited so much better. I don't know if you know the story, because at night they'd go in and do, after the Bela Lugosi day would end, the Mexican crew would go in
Oh, I do
and
remember
film.
reading about this.
So
Yeah.
they would watch dailies and improve on it. Now it's a different actor. It's not quite the same, but the actual technical shooting of the movie is so much better. It's really amazing.
That's wild.
Just
So
even in focusing and things like that, and close-ups and stuff. It's just it's just a much tighter movie. Yeah, it's interesting.
Is that out there to see then? Like,
Yeah, there's versions. I think I have a DVD where they have both on it. Yeah.
oh, I'm gonna seek this out. I'm very
Yeah, you
excited.
got to check that out. It's really cool. And if you back to back them, you'll be like, oh, okay. I kind of see that they were watching what they did during the day, and then it's weird. It's a weird one.
Yeah. Oh, cool. And where can people follow yourself if you want them to, and your music?
Facebook or Instagram, just pop in, my name or Pat Todd and the Rank Outsiders, and it's all on there. I don't have a specific website, but yeah, you can get linked up through there. Just look it up on Facebook, and we're doing stuff all the time. Supposedly going to Australia this year.
Oh, really?
We'll see. Yeah, maybe November. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, it should be interesting.
Yeah. Well, this has been very fun. I'm glad this happened.
Yeah, me too. It's good to see you again.
You as well.
Say hi to Annabelle. I remember her.
Yeah. She not always on the show, but we went out for my birthday the other day. So
that's nice.
Yeah, I'll tell her you said hello.
You're looking great too, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I feel much better. Yeah.
I bet. Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah, I can't quite fit in the tight bodysuits, but I can't play the monsters. But
yeah.
I lost my own monster suit. But I know I look better, but the main thing really is much healthier. I feel much better physically, and mental well-being is also much better. And for people who don't know, I lost a lot of weight, and not just lost weight, but I got healthy too.
Right. Yeah. I know how hard those things are to do. So that's congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm going to play us out with the Mutant Reavers, our music of the month here. And thank you, Walter, for joining me.
Thanks, Neal. Yep. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. We're going to play music here. I should have had this all set up.
Oh, well, what are you going to do?
All right, here we go.
There you go. You made it.
There we go. Mitchell.
Okay, cool.
Hey, I know that guy.
Hey,
you take off if you like.
Eggs. Oh, eggs. Boiled eggs.
It's about done here, I think.
Oh, okay. Hour and a half.
It's not your decision to make. You can only
All
Hey.
right. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that.